From now on, Mom, the bank will send your pension straight into my account. You don't need anything, just a corner to die in." The words sliced through me like a knife. After 40 years of teaching, raising him alone after his father died, this was my reward. I swallowed hard, didn't say a single word as Todd stormed out. My silence wasn't surrender. That night, I placed something special in the refrigerator. When he eventually opened it, his scream told me everything. Some lessons come too late. I never imagined my golden years would turn to rust. For 4 decades, I shaped young minds as an elementary school teacher in Springfield. The children loved my creative approach to learning, especially my famous puppet shows that made history come alive. My classroom was my sanctuary after Frank died suddenly of a heart attack, when Todd was only 7. The memory of that night still haunts me, trying to explain to my little boy that Daddy wasn't coming home while my own heart was shattering. Being a widowed mother meant working twice as hard. School days, followed by evening tutoring sessions and weekend craft fairs selling handmade educational toys. Every extra dollar went into a college fund for Todd. I wanted him to have opportunities that neither Frank nor I had enjoyed. Our modest home became a place of books and learning, though sometimes I worried that my focus on education overlooked other needs in my growing son. Todd was a bright child but difficult after losing his father. Tantrums evolved into teenage rebellion, yet underneath I saw a sensitive boy afraid of more loss. His grades remained exceptional despite his attitude, and I beamed with pride when he received a partial scholarship to State University. I sold Frank's restored vintage truck to cover the remaining tuition, never telling Todd the sacrifice it represented. College transformed Todd into a confident, polished young man. He majored in finance, met Allison in his senior year, and landed a job at a prestigious investment firm after graduation. When they married 3 years later, I sold my treasured collection of antique children's books to help pay for their dream wedding. Todd seemed genuinely moved, embracing me tightly at the reception. "You've always come through for me, Mom," he whispered. Those words felt like validation for the years of sacrifice. Their life together appeared picture-perfect from the carefully curated social media posts and holiday visits. Todd climbed the corporate ladder while Allison built her career in marketing. They bought a beautiful home in an exclusive neighborhood, took exotic vacations, and seemed to have it all. Meanwhile, I continued teaching, putting away small amounts for retirement and finding joy in my garden and book club. Then came the economic downturn. At 67, I finally retired with a modest pension and settled into a peaceful routine. That same month, Todd lost his job during company-wide layoffs. During one of our weekly phone calls, his voice sounded strained as he mentioned temporary financial adjustments. I offered sympathy but didn't pry. Only later did I learn from Allison that Todd's job loss coincided with the discovery of his gambling problem, substantial debts accumulated through online poker and sports betting. "We need to regroup," Todd explained when he and Allison appeared on my doorstep with suitcases. "Just until I find something new. 3 months, tops." My paid-off home suddenly made practical sense to them. I welcomed them with open arms, secretly thrilled to have daily time with my son again. Perhaps this was an opportunity to rebuild our somewhat distant relationship. The first weeks were harmonious. Todd applied for positions while Allison worked remotely. They took me to dinner, helped with household projects, and we laughed over evening board games. I began to envision a new chapter, the 3 of us supporting each other through this temporary setback. Todd even helped expand my vegetable garden, reminding me of summers when he was young. But subtle changes emerged. Todd's initial flurry of job applications slowed. He began sleeping later, growing irritable when Allison mentioned promising openings. I noticed wine bottles filling the recycling bin, then stronger spirits appearing in the kitchen cabinet. One evening, Todd returned from a networking meeting slurring his words, snapping at Allison when she expressed concern. While cleaning their bathroom one morning, I discovered empty liquor bottles hidden behind towels in the linen closet. Later that week, while collecting laundry, I found crumpled gambling receipts stuffed in his jeans pocket. My stomach twisted with familiar dread, the same feeling I'd had watching Frank struggle with occasional gambling years before. That evening, I gently approached Todd while Allison was grocery shopping. "Honey, I found some receipts," I began carefully. "If you're having trouble, we can find help. There are programs..." The transformation was instantaneous. His charming smile vanished, replaced by cold fury. "You went through my things?" he demanded, towering over me. "My finances are none of your business. I'm handling it." "I'm worried about you," I persisted, thinking of his father. Frank had similar issues, and "I am nothing like him," Todd hissed. "He was weak, a failure." The words stunned me. "Your father was a good man who loved you very much. A good man who left his family with nothing." His voice turned mocking. "Just like you're about to do with that little teacher's pension. How far do you think that's going to stretch, Mom? You should be grateful we're here to help manage things." Before I could respond, Allison returned, and Todd instantly transformed back into the cheerful son. That night, I found my car keys missing from their usual hook. When I asked about them at breakfast, Todd dangled them with a concerned expression. "I'm holding on to these for now, Mom. Dr. Lewis mentioned your vision isn't what it used to be. We can't have you driving around unsafe, can we?" I hadn't seen Dr. Lewis in months, and my vision was perfectly fine with glasses. But the message was clear. The power dynamic in my home had shifted dramatically. Over the next few weeks, my home became unrecognizable. Todd and Allison took over the master bedroom because they needed space for their office equipment. I was relocated to the small guest room overlooking the side yard rather than my beloved garden. My morning routine of coffee and crosswords on the patio disappeared as Todd claimed the space for his important calls that I never actually overheard. My longtime friends stopped visiting after Todd questioned them at the door about what business they had with Mom at her age. Phone calls were screened, with Todd often claiming I was resting or unavailable. When I confronted him, he dismissed my concerns. "You were always so busy with those children at school. Now it's time to relax. Let us handle the complications." My beautiful garden, cultivated over 20 years, began to wither as Todd deemed my gardening too strenuous and ignored it himself despite promises to maintain it. The bird feeders I'd faithfully filled stood empty, the songbirds eventually stopping their visits altogether. Small freedoms disappeared daily. Driving privileges, shopping independently, even choosing what to watch on the television I had purchased. Financial control tightened next. Todd instituted household contributions from my pension for shared expenses, though I owned the house outright and had always paid the modest utilities without difficulty. Every purchase required justification, with Todd scrutinizing receipts and questioning necessities. "Mom, do you really need specialized gardening gloves?" he asked when I returned from a rare solo trip to the garden center. "And 3 kinds of birdseed? That's wasteful spending." "The birds have different preferences," I explained, feeling ridiculous, justifying a $12 purchase. "The cardinals won't eat what the finches like." Todd exchanged glances with Allison. "See what I mean? These little extravagances add up. We need to be more careful with Mom's limited resources." I attempted to help Todd with his supposed job search, highlighting teaching positions at the community college where several former colleagues worked. "They're always looking for finance instructors," I suggested. "The pay isn't corporate level, but it's steady work." Todd laughed dismissively. "Teaching? That's your solution? I made more in a week than you made in a month, Mom. I'm not settling for scraps." I noticed Allison becoming uncomfortable with these exchanges. Once, while Todd was out, she apologized for their extended stay. "He's been applying," she whispered, "but also turning down interviews if they don't meet his salary requirements." Her expression showed concern, perhaps fear. "I've suggested we look for our own place, but Todd says it makes more financial sense to stay here." My attempts to maintain connections with my support network dwindled. My weekly calls with my sister Patty became sporadic, as Todd always seemed to need the phone or hovered nearby during conversations. My closest friend Susan, who lived 3 blocks away and had been my confidant since Frank died, was repeatedly turned away at the door. "Mom's health isn't good today," Todd would say. "Too much excitement isn't good for her." One evening, unable to sleep, I ventured downstairs for tea and overheard Todd and Allison in intense conversation in the kitchen. "The house would solve everything," Todd was saying. "It's worth at least $300,000 in this market. We sell, pay off my debts, and have enough left for a fresh start." "But it's your mother's home," Allison protested. "Where would she go?" "There are plenty of senior living options that her pension would cover," Todd replied casually. "Basic ones, anyway. She doesn't need much space anymore." She'd never agree to sell, Allison said. Todd's laugh chilled me. Who says she needs to agree? I've been researching power of attorney. Mom's getting forgetful. It wouldn't be hard to make a case for cognitive decline. I retreated silently, my heart pounding. The next morning I confronted Todd directly, asking about their plans for my house. His expression darkened. From now on, Mom, the bank will send your pension straight into my account, he announced coldly. You don't need anything, just a corner to die in. I swallowed hard, didn't say a single word. His cruelty left me breathless, unable to formulate a response. As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I retreated to my small bedroom, tears finally flowing freely. While sitting on my bed, I noticed the edge of an old envelope peeking from behind the dresser. A letter from Frank I'd tucked away years ago and forgotten during my hasty relocation to this room. With trembling hands, I pulled it out and read his words written shortly before his death, as if he'd somehow anticipated leaving us too soon. Remember who you are, Jamie, Frank had written. You're stronger than you believe. Never let anyone, not even those you love most, take your dignity. Always stand your ground. I pressed the letter to my chest, Frank's words reigniting a spark I thought had been extinguished. This house represented not just shelter, but 40 years of memories, independence, and security. I would not surrender it, or myself, without a fight. The weeks following Todd's pension ultimatum marked a sharp decline in my health and freedom. My meals became increasingly restricted. Todd claimed to be helping with my diet, though the portions grew smaller while the quality diminished. Simple dishes I'd prepared for decades were deemed too complicated for me to manage alone. I lost 15 pounds in a month, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. My cell phone mysteriously broke and wasn't replaced. My mail now went directly to Todd, who claimed to be managing my correspondence to reduce stress. When quarterly statements from my pension fund arrived, Todd intercepted them, providing only vague summaries about everything being handled properly. I had no way to verify these claims. Todd began speaking about me rather than to me when others were present. Mom gets confused easily now, he told our neighbor Carol when she inquired about my absence from the neighborhood book club. Her memory isn't what it used to be. The insidious narrative of my supposed cognitive decline spread through subtle comments to family and friends. During a rare permitted phone call with my sister Patty, Todd interrupted to clarify details of a shared childhood memory I'd mentioned. Mom gets the timeline mixed up these days, he explained smoothly. The doctor says it's normal at her age. No doctor had said any such thing. My annual checkup 6 months earlier had shown me to be in excellent health with sharp cognitive function. Doctor. Miller had even commented on how I was putting younger patients to shame with my memory and vitality. But without access to my medical records or direct communication with my physician, I couldn't prove this. My beloved cat Marmalade, who had been my constant companion for 11 years, disappeared one afternoon while I napped. When I frantically searched the house and yard, Todd informed me casually that he'd rehomed her. Pets are too much responsibility at your age, Mom. What if you tripped over her? Besides, the litter box was becoming unsanitary. I cried for days over Marmalade, my grief dismissed as emotional instability. In truth, I had meticulously maintained Marmalade's care, and she had provided comfort during my loneliest moments after retirement. Personal possessions began vanishing next. The pearl earrings Frank gave me on our 20th anniversary. His watch that I'd kept in my jewelry box, intending to give to Todd when he demonstrated the maturity to appreciate its significance. When questioned, Todd suggested I had misplaced these items or, worse, that I'd imagined their existence entirely. Are you sure about the watch, Mom? He asked with exaggerated patience. Dad wore a Timex. I don't remember any special watch. The gaslighting was constant and effective. Even I began questioning my memories, wondering if stress was affecting my recall. Only by concentrating on concrete details, the inscription on the watch, the jewelry box's secret compartment, could I reassure myself of my sanity. One morning, Todd presented me with a bank letter showing my monthly pension deposit had been successfully redirected to a new account. All set, he announced triumphantly. I've arranged an allowance for your personal items. $20 weekly should be more than enough. $20, barely covering a coffee and sandwich at the local cafe. My teacher's pension wasn't extravagant, but it had provided comfortable independence. Now I would need to request funds for basic necessities like shampoo or shoes. "I'd like to see the full statement," I requested calmly. "No need to worry about the details," Todd responded. "It's all being properly managed." My dependence was now nearly complete. Without transportation, communication, or financial resources, I existed at Todd's mercy in my own home. The isolation bred fear, then depression, then something unexpected, a quiet, simmering rage. While Todd and Allison were out one afternoon, I searched Todd's makeshift office for information about my accounts. Hidden beneath expense reports was a draft power of attorney document with detailed notes about establishing legal control over my assets. The document included disturbing language about my diminished capacity and inability to manage financial affairs, complete fabrications that nonetheless could become legal reality with the right medical assessment. With growing panic, I used Todd's computer to check my savings account, the emergency fund I'd built over decades of careful budgeting. The balance showed just $87 remaining from what had been nearly $40,000. Multiple transfers to unknown accounts had drained my life savings within weeks. I was printing account statements when Todd returned unexpectedly. His expression turned thunderous as he snatched the papers from my hands. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. "Those are my accounts," I responded, struggling to keep my voice steady. "My money." "Your money?" Todd laughed without humor. "Who paid for your hip replacement last year? Who covers your medications? Your grocery bills?" "Medicare covered my hip. My pension pays for my medicine, and I've never needed help with groceries," I countered, knowing each statement was factual. "You've taken control of my money without permission, Todd." His facade cracked completely. "Permission? I don't need permission to protect you from yourself. You're nearly 70, Mom. Your teaching career is over. Your usefulness is over. The only value you have left is in this house and whatever's left of your savings." He lowered his voice, leaning close. "If you keep pushing, I'll have you evaluated for cognitive decline and placed somewhere with round-the-clock supervision. Is that what you want? A nursing home where no one knows your name?" The threat hung between us, terrifying in its plausibility. With falsified medical assessments and the power of attorney documents he was preparing, Todd could legally enforce such an outcome. I retreated, appearing defeated, buying time to think. That evening, while organizing my remaining possessions in the small bedroom, I found our old wedding photo that had somehow survived the purge of my belongings. Frank looked so young, so hopeful, his arm protectively around my waist. I traced his face with my fingertip, remembering his integrity, his courage. "I won't surrender, Frank," I whispered to his image. "Not our home, not my dignity. I promise you that." The next morning marked the beginning of my resistance. On the surface, I appeared compliant, accepting the meager breakfast Todd provided, thanking him for managing my affairs, asking permission for simple activities. But beneath this performance of frailty, I began methodically documenting everything. I created a journal using paper from an old spiral notebook found in my dresser drawer. Each night, I recorded Todd's actions, conversations, and financial maneuvers, noting dates, times, and witnesses when possible. I hid this growing documentation behind loose wallpaper in my closet, a spot discovered years ago when renovating but never repaired. My small bedroom window faced our neighbor Carol's kitchen. Carol, a retired nurse, had always been friendly, though not as close as Susan. Observing her morning routine of watering plants at her kitchen window, I wrote a brief note explaining my situation and asking for help contacting Susan or the local senior services. I folded the note into a paper airplane, a skill learned from decades teaching children, and launched it during Todd's lengthy shower the next morning. The plane landed perfectly on Carol's windowsill. I watched anxiously as she discovered it, read with widening eyes, and looked toward my window with a discreet nod. 2 days later, during a carefully monitored trip to the supermarket with Todd, I spotted Carol in the produce section with another woman. Todd stepped away briefly to take a phone call, giving Carol seconds to introduce Linda, a social worker from Senior Protective Services. "We need to talk privately," Linda whispered, slipping me a business card. "Can you meet?" "Impossible," I murmured as Todd returned. "He monitors everything." Linda nodded understanding. "Next week, same time, women's restroom," she whispered before greeting Todd cheerfully and moving away. The following week, I requested a grocery trip, mentioning specific items Todd enjoyed to ensure his cooperation. Once there, I excused myself to use the restroom, where Linda waited in a locked stall. "What you're describing is elder abuse," Linda stated plainly after hearing my abbreviated account. "Financial exploitation, isolation, psychological abuse, all criminal offenses." The validation almost broke me. After months of gaslighting, having someone believe me and name my experience was overwhelming. "You have rights," Linda continued urgently. "Legal protection. But we need evidence and a safety plan before confronting your son." She provided a prepaid cell phone, carefully concealed in a sanitary product wrapper that Todd would never inspect. "Document everything. Photograph financial papers if possible. Record conversations that demonstrate control or threats." "He's preparing power of attorney documents," I revealed. "Claims I'm mentally incompetent." Linda's expression hardened. "That's fraud. Your medical records would contradict this, but we need to act quickly." We developed a communication system. Brief calls when Todd was out, coded text messages that appeared to be marketing if discovered. Linda connected me with legal aid, specializing in elder protection, and helped develop an extraction plan if immediate danger arose. With this lifeline established, I became more strategic. I began photographing documents with the hidden phone while appearing to nap or shower. I recorded conversations by keeping the phone concealed in my pocket during Todd's increasingly unguarded tirades. I carefully documented missing possessions and financial transactions, building a comprehensive case file. Through careful coordination with Carol, I learned Susan had been desperately trying to reach me, even filing a wellness check that Todd had somehow deflected. Patty had grown suspicious after our last truncated conversation and was considering a surprise visit. My isolation wasn't as complete as Todd believed. Allison became an unexpected ally. Though still cowed by Todd's volatility, she began slipping me extra food, warning me about Todd's moods, and occasionally carrying messages to Carol. "This isn't right," she whispered one day while Todd was out. "What he's doing to you, it's cruel." "Why stay with him?" I asked gently. Her eyes filled with fear. "You don't know what he's like when he's really angry." But I was beginning to understand exactly what my son was capable of. My investigation revealed Todd had lost not just his job but his professional license due to ethical violations related to client funds. His gambling debts exceeded $200,000, with aggressive creditors threatening legal action. The house, my house, represented his only potential escape from financial ruin. Through Linda, I learned Todd had inquired about reverse mortgages on my property without my knowledge. When these attempts failed without my signature, he began exploring guardianship options that would grant him complete control over my assets. The urgency of my situation became clear when I discovered an appointment card for a geriatric evaluation center the following Monday. Todd had scheduled a competency assessment without my knowledge or consent. "Good news, Mom," Todd announced that evening. "Dr. Williams will be evaluating you next week. Just routine stuff for someone your age." "Dr. Williams?" I questioned, knowing my longtime physician was Dr. Miller. A specialist in geriatric care, Todd explained smoothly. He's helped many families like ours navigate these challenging transitions. Through Linda's resources, I discovered Dr. Williams had a history of cooperation with family members seeking control of seniors' assets, providing favorable competency evaluations without thorough examination. The evaluation would be the final piece Todd needed to secure legal control of everything I owned. That night, I accessed Todd's laptop while he slept and found emails confirming my fears. Todd had already drafted sales listings for my home with a real estate agent friend, contingent on obtaining power of attorney. The listing included an as-is sale provision, with a target closing date just 3 weeks away. More disturbing were emails with a document preparation service about transferring my investment accounts and pension fund under his full control. Todd had already prepared documents claiming I was no longer capable of independent living and required full-time supervision. I was scheduled to be declared incompetent on Monday and moved to an appropriate care facility by Wednesday. My home would be listed for sale by Friday. Everything I had spent my life building would be liquidated to solve Todd's gambling debts within a month. This discovery galvanized me. With Linda's help, I prepared legal countermeasures, power of attorney documents naming my sister Patty as my representative, notarized statements about my mental competence from friends and former colleagues, and a formal complaint to the state licensing board about Dr. Williams. I gathered my most critical documents and irreplaceable mementos, creating a go bag hidden in my closet if emergency evacuation became necessary. But I needed insurance, something Todd couldn't destroy or dismiss if other evidence disappeared. That's when I conceived my refrigerator plan. In our basement, I found a waterproof container Frank had used for fishing gear. Inside, I placed copies of all evidence: financial records, recorded conversations, photographs of documents, statements from Allison and Carol, along with a comprehensive account of Todd's actions. I included contact information for Linda, my sister, and the elder abuse hotline. This container, sealed and secured, went into the refrigerator's vegetable crisper beneath bags of lettuce Todd never touched. If everything else failed, this evidence would remain discoverable by authorities. I also created duplicate evidence packages with Carol, Susan, and Linda, fail-safes against Todd's increasingly desperate actions. As Monday's appointment approached, I felt an unfamiliar sensation replacing my fear, determination. Whatever happened next, I would face it standing up, not huddled in a corner waiting to die. Monday morning arrived with tense anticipation. I dressed carefully in a professional outfit I'd once worn to parent-teacher conferences, subtle armor for the confrontation ahead. Todd seemed unusually solicitous, bringing me tea and speaking with exaggerated patience. "Ready for your appointment, Mom?" he asked, keys jangling in his hand. "Dr. Williams is looking forward to meeting you." "I'm not going," I stated simply, remaining seated in my kitchen chair. "And I won't be signing any documents today either." Todd's friendly facade flickered. "What are you talking about? This appointment is important for your health." "Dr. Williams isn't my doctor," I continued calmly. "I've never met him. I did not consent to this evaluation, and I won't participate in it." "You're confused," Todd said, his voice hardening. "This is exactly why we need professional assessment. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking very clearly," I countered. "Clear enough to understand what power of attorney means. Clear enough to question why my pension goes into your account. Clear enough to wonder where my $40,000 in savings went." Todd's expression transformed completely. The mask of concerned son vanished, replaced by cold fury. "You ungrateful witch," he hissed. "After everything I've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Todd? Taken my home? Isolated me from friends? Stolen my money? Is that what good sons do?" He moved toward me threateningly. "You think you understand what's happening. You understand nothing. Without me, you'd be helpless. I'm protecting you from yourself." "I don't need protection," I replied, standing to face him though he towered over me. "I need my son to respect me, to honor what's mine." "What's yours?" he scoffed. "You think you earned anything valuable teaching snot-nosed brats for pennies? Your entire career wouldn't pay my debts. But this house solves everything." "The house isn't for sale," I said firmly. "Not now, not ever. Not without my consent." Todd slammed his fist on the table, making me flinch despite my resolve. "Your consent means nothing. By this time tomorrow, you won't legally be able to consent to anything. Dr. Williams will see to that." "I've spoken with Adult Protective Services," I revealed, watching shock register on his face. "They're very interested in your financial arrangements, especially the transfers from my accounts." This disclosure triggered something dangerous in Todd. He grabbed my wrist painfully. "Who have you been talking to? How? Your phone is gone." I remained silent, refusing to reveal my communication methods. Todd's grip tightened. "It doesn't matter," he decided. "A confused elderly woman making wild accusations. No one will believe you over me. I'm a respected financial advisor." "Former financial advisor," I corrected. "Your license was revoked 3 months ago. Something about misappropriation of client funds." The blood drained from Todd's face. He released my wrist abruptly. "You know nothing." "I know enough," I responded quietly. "Enough to understand you're desperate. Gambling debts don't disappear, Todd. Neither do angry creditors." "Shut up!" he roared, sweeping his arm across the table, sending my teacup crashing to the floor. "You think you can threaten me? In my own house?" "My house," I corrected again. "Paid for with my teacher's salary. The mortgage satisfied 15 years ago, solely in my name." Todd's breathing became ragged, his control visibly slipping. This ends now. We're going to that appointment. If I have to drag you there myself. I'm not going anywhere, I insisted, though fear crept back as Todd's demeanor grew more volatile. You have no choice, he growled, pulling car keys from his pocket. Get your coat. Our standoff was interrupted by Allison entering the kitchen. She assessed the scene, broken china on the floor, Todd's aggressive posture, my defensive stance, and stepped between us. Todd, stop, she urged. This isn't helping anything. Stay out of this, Todd snapped. Mom needs professional evaluation. She's clearly paranoid and confused. Allison glanced at me questioningly. I met her gaze steadily, silently imploring her to see the truth. She doesn't look confused to me, Allison observed carefully. She looks scared of her own son. Todd turned his anger toward her. You too? After everything I've done for you? What have you done except lie? Allison challenged, her voice gaining strength. About your job, about gambling, about how we'd stay here temporarily. I've watched you isolate and manipulate your mother for months, and I've been too afraid to stop it. Afraid? Todd laughed bitterly. Of what? I've given you everything. No, Allison countered. Jamie gave us everything. A home when we had nowhere to go, kindness when we didn't deserve it, and you've repaid her by stealing and threatening her. Their argument escalated, giving me precious moments to text Linda our predetermined distress code. Todd's attention remained fixed on Allison until the doorbell rang. Expecting someone? Todd demanded, grabbing my arm roughly. Let go of her, Allison ordered, trying to break his grip. Todd shoved her aside. I'm handling this my way now. He dragged me toward the back of the house while Allison answered the door. I heard muffled conversation, then Allison's voice grew louder. Yes, she's here. Please come in. Todd pushed me into my bedroom, his expression murderous. Don't make a sound, he threatened. Whoever it is will leave. Then we'll deal with your rebellion. He locked the door from outside, leaving me trapped. Through the window, I glimpsed a police car parked beside an unmarked vehicle. Help had arrived, but Todd still controlled access to me. I retrieved my hidden phone and called Linda directly. I'm locked in my bedroom, I whispered. East side of the house, small window facing the neighbor's kitchen. We see it, Linda confirmed. Officer Andrea is requesting entry now. Stay calm. I could hear Todd's voice from the front room, smoothly explaining that I was resting and couldn't be disturbed. Mom's been having difficult days, he was saying. Confusion, paranoia. That's why we've arranged professional evaluation. We need to confirm her well-being, a firm female voice responded. Now. Of course, Todd agreed. Let me check if she's awake. Footsteps approached my door. The lock clicked, and Todd entered, his public mask firmly back in place. Mom, there's a police officer and social worker here, he explained loudly for the benefit of those in the hallway. They want to make sure you're okay. He leaned close, whispering harshly. Tell them everything's fine, or you'll regret it. One word about your delusions, and I'll have you committed before sunset. A uniformed officer appeared in the doorway behind him. Ma'am, I'm Officer Andrea Jenkins. Could we speak privately? Todd interjected smoothly. Mom gets anxious with strangers. I should stay. Sir, we need to speak with your mother alone, Officer Jenkins stated firmly. Please wait in the living room with Mr. Rivera. Todd hesitated, then nodded pleasantly. Of course. Mom, remember what we discussed about your health. The threat in his eyes was unmistakable as he exited. Once alone with Officer Jenkins and Linda, whom I recognized from our clandestine meetings, I felt safe enough to reveal everything, the financial exploitation, isolation, threats, and planned involuntary commitment. He's scheduled a fraudulent competency evaluation today, I explained, showing them the appointment card, with a doctor known for cooperating with families seeking control of seniors' assets. Linda nodded grimly. Dr. Williams. We're familiar with his practices. The licensing board is investigating him already. Do you feel physically safe here? Officer Jenkins asked directly. I considered the question carefully. Not anymore. Todd's behavior is escalating. Today was the first time he's been physically intimidating. We can remove you immediately to emergency senior housing, Linda offered, while we process protective orders and begin formal investigation. The prospect of leaving my home was painful but necessary. "I need to take some things," I said, retrieving my prepared go-bag from the closet. "We'll also need to document any physical evidence of abuse," Officer Jenkins explained, photographing the bruises forming on my wrist from Todd's grip. As we prepared to leave, I remembered my hidden journals. "There's evidence behind the wallpaper," I told them, showing the loose section in my closet. Linda carefully removed the journal pages, placing them in an evidence envelope. "This documentation will be extremely helpful," she assured me. "Contemporaneous notes carry significant weight in these cases." When we returned to the living room, Todd was speaking smoothly to the male social worker, Mr. Rivera. "This is all a misunderstanding," he was saying. "Mom's been struggling with reality lately, inventing conspiracies." His expression hardened seeing my packed bag and the evidence envelopes. "What's happening? Where do you think you're going?" "Mrs. Bennett has requested temporary emergency housing," Linda explained professionally, "while we investigate allegations of elder abuse." "Abuse?" Todd laughed incredulously. "That's absurd. I've sacrificed everything caring for her." "Financial exploitation is abuse," Officer Jenkins stated. "So is isolation, intimidation, and false imprisonment. Mrs. Bennett has provided substantial evidence warranting investigation." "What evidence?" Todd demanded. "The ramblings of a confused old woman?" "Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers," I answered calmly. "Recorded conversations about selling my house without consent, documented isolation from friends and family, and witnesses." I glanced at Allison, who stepped forward despite Todd's glare. "I've watched it happen," she admitted quietly. "All of it. The control, the lies, the threats. I should have spoken up sooner." Todd's facade crumbled completely. "You backstabbing bitch," he snarled, lunging toward Allison. Officer Jenkins intervened immediately, restraining Todd. "Sir, control yourself or you'll be arrested right now." Todd struggled briefly, then subsided, glaring at me with undisguised hatred. "You'll regret this," he promised. "You think you have evidence? Let's see what remains when I'm finished." His threat confirmed my fears about preserving evidence. As Officer Jenkins and Linda escorted me to their vehicle, I looked back at my home of 40 years, wondering if I would ever return. Todd remained on the porch, watching with cold fury as we drove away. Later that evening, safely installed in a secure senior housing facility, I received a call from Officer Jenkins. Todd had been briefly detained for questioning, then released on his own recognizance pending investigation. Upon returning to my house, his first action, as I had anticipated, was to search for and destroy evidence. When he opened the refrigerator looking for alcohol to calm his nerves, he discovered my waterproof container. His scream of rage upon finding the comprehensive documentation inside was heard by neighbors 3 houses away. The senior housing facility provided immediate safety, though the stark environment felt nothing like home. My small temporary apartment contained basic furnishings, meals arrived at regular intervals, and security personnel monitored all entrances. Despite the institutional atmosphere, I felt an unfamiliar sensation, freedom from constant scrutiny and manipulation. Linda visited the morning after my extraction, bringing updates on the rapidly developing case. "Adult Protective Services has filed for an emergency protection order," she explained. "This will legally prevent Todd from accessing your accounts or property while investigation proceeds." "What about my house?" I asked, concerned about leaving it under Todd's control. "Officer Jenkins is arranging for Allison to secure the property," Linda assured me. "Todd's access will be legally restricted once the protection order is processed." "Is Allison safe?" I worried, remembering Todd's aggressive lunge toward her. "She's staying with friends," Linda explained, and considering her own protective order given his behavior. The following days brought a flurry of activity. I met with Aaron, an attorney specializing in elder law, who reviewed my documentation with growing indignation. "This is one of the most comprehensive cases of financial exploitation I've seen," Aaron acknowledged, examining bank statements showing systematic emptying of my accounts, and attempting to force a fraudulent competency evaluation to gain guardianship. That's criminal. "Can my accounts be recovered?" I asked, thinking of my depleted savings. "Much of it, yes," Aaron confirmed. "We've already frozen all accounts in your name and issued fraud alerts. The transfers create a clear paper trail directly to Todd's gambling accounts." I provided detailed testimony to detectives specializing in elder abuse cases, walking them through months of escalating control and exploitation. They recorded formal statements, photographed physical evidence of restraint, and collected the recordings I'd secretly made of Todd's threats. Detective Marshall, the lead investigator, expressed particular interest in the fraudulent medical evaluation scheme. "We've been building a case against Dr. Williams for months," she explained. "Your situation provides critical evidence of his arrangement with family members seeking inappropriate control." 4 days after my removal from the house, Todd was formally arrested on multiple charges, including elder abuse, financial exploitation, attempted fraud, false imprisonment, and assault. The sight of his booking photo, unshaven, disheveled, furious, brought complicated emotions. This angry stranger was still my son, the little boy I'd raised alone after losing Frank. Somehow, he'd transformed into someone capable of calculated cruelty toward his own mother. "It's normal to feel conflicted," Linda assured me during our counseling session. "The person who hurt you is also someone you love deeply. Both realities exist simultaneously." Meanwhile, Allison filed for divorce, cooperating fully with investigators by providing additional documentation of Todd's schemes. She revealed he had been planning to declare me incompetent for nearly 3 months, researching facilities with minimal oversight where I could be stored cheaply while he liquidated my assets. "I should have spoken up sooner," Allison told me during a tearful visit. "I was afraid of him, but that's no excuse." "Fear is a powerful silencer," I responded, thinking of my own initial paralysis. "What matters is that you found your voice." As the criminal case progressed, I faced practical concerns about returning home. Todd had damaged the property during a rage after discovering my refrigerator evidence, breaking windows and putting holes in walls. More disturbingly, he had sold or pawned many of my possessions, family heirlooms, jewelry, even kitchen appliances, to fund his gambling addiction during his final days in the house. "The Crime Victims Compensation Fund can help with repairs," Linda explained, "and the court can order restitution for stolen items." After 2 weeks in temporary housing, I received clearance to return home with safety measures in place: new locks, security system, regular welfare checks, and an emergency response pendant. Walking through my front door felt surreal after everything that had transpired. The house bore visible wounds from Todd's occupation and subsequent rage: patched walls awaiting paint, empty spaces where furniture had been sold, faded rectangles on walls where family photos once hung. The garden had withered from neglect, and familiar objects had vanished from every room. Yet beneath the damage, the bones of my home remained: the kitchen where I'd taught Todd to bake cookies, the living room where Frank and I had danced on quiet evenings, the backyard where generations of children had learned about butterflies and bird migration during special science lessons. Carol arrived shortly after my return, bringing a homemade casserole and fierce determination to help. "The neighborhood watch is activated," she announced. "Someone will drive by every hour for the first week. No one approaches without identification." Susan arrived next, our decades-long friendship immediately rekindling despite months of forced separation. She brought armfuls of garden seedlings and quiet solidarity. "We'll rebuild," she promised simply, understanding exactly what I needed. My sister Patty flew in from Arizona, bringing both practical assistance and emotional support. "I knew something was wrong," she admitted, helping reorganize my disrupted home. "I should have pushed harder when calls became restricted." "He was very convincing," I acknowledged. "That's how manipulation works." The most unexpected support came through my former elementary school. Word spread quickly among generations of students I had taught, triggering an outpouring of assistance. Former pupils, now adults with families of their own, arrived with replacement furniture, garden tools, home-cooked meals, and determination to restore what had been damaged. Jennifer, who had been a shy first grader 30 years earlier and now owned a security company, installed a comprehensive system at no cost. "You made me feel safe when I was little," she explained. "Now it's my turn." Michael, a former troubled student who had found direction partly through our after-school chess club, organized a team of volunteers to restore the garden. "You planted seeds in all of us," he said, gesturing to the dozen former students weeding and mulching. "We're just returning the favor." As my home slowly healed, so did my spirit. The violation of trust remained painful, but the community response reinforced something essential. I had built a life of meaning and connection that transcended Todd's betrayal. The legal proceedings continued steadily. Todd remained in custody, deemed a flight risk due to gambling connections and threats made against me. The evidence from my refrigerator container proved pivotal, providing ironclad documentation of systematic exploitation that even the most skeptical authorities couldn't dismiss. Detective Marshall visited with unexpected news 3 weeks after my return home. "We recovered some of your possessions," she announced, placing a familiar box on my kitchen table. Inside was Frank's watch, retrieved from a pawn shop where Todd had sold it for gambling money. The tarnished timepiece with its inscription, "To Frank, my forever love, Jamie," represented a tangible connection to my past that I had feared permanently lost. "There's more," Detective Marshall continued. "The investigation into Dr. Williams revealed a network of coordinated elder exploitation. Your case helped expose systemic abuse affecting dozens of seniors. This revelation transformed my personal tragedy into something broader." When asked if I would testify about my experience at legislative hearings on strengthening elder protection laws, I agreed without hesitation. "Your documentation was exceptional," Detective Marshall commented. "Few victims managed to gather such comprehensive evidence." "I was a teacher for 40 years," I reminded her with a small smile. "Thorough documentation becomes second nature." As criminal proceedings advanced toward trial, my living room became an informal headquarters for an emerging community support network. Susan connected me with the director of the local senior center, where I began volunteering as a peer counselor for other elderly individuals facing exploitation. "You understand what they're experiencing," the director explained. "That perspective is invaluable. Each small step, replacing stolen items, restoring my financial independence, rebuilding my garden, represented reclaiming pieces of myself." The physical bruises from Todd's grip faded, though the emotional wounds healed more slowly. Linda continued regular counseling sessions, helping me process the complex grief of losing my son not to death, but to his own destructive choices. "He's still alive," I confessed during one difficult session, "but I'm mourning him as if he died." "You're mourning the son you thought you had," Linda corrected gently. "The person who emerged through his actions is someone different." 6 months after my return home, with criminal proceedings moving toward resolution, I received a request through Aaron. Todd wanted to meet before entering his plea agreement. "You have no obligation to see him," Aaron emphasized. "This is entirely your decision." The prospect of facing Todd again triggered complicated emotions: fear, anger, lingering love, profound disappointment. After careful consideration, I agreed to a supervised meeting at the courthouse, with both Linda and Officer Jenkins present. Todd appeared dramatically changed by incarceration. Thinner, subdued, the aggressive confidence replaced by wary calculation. As we sat across from each other in the sterile conference room, the gulf between us seemed unbridgeable. "You look well," he offered awkwardly. "I am well," I confirmed. "Why did you want to see me, Todd?" He shifted uncomfortably. "My attorney says a demonstration of remorse might influence sentencing." The naked self-interest behind the request was hardly surprising yet still disappointing. "Is that all?" Todd's mask slipped momentarily. "What do you want from me? To say I'm sorry?" "Fine. I'm sorry." "Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry you were caught?" I asked directly. His expression hardened. "You could have just helped me. That's what mothers are supposed to do." "I did help you," I reminded him. "I welcomed you into my home. I offered support and suggestions for rebuilding your career. What I wouldn't do was surrender everything I'd worked for to enable your gambling addiction." Todd scoffed. "Your precious teacher's pension and modest house. Such valuable assets to protect." "They were mine," I said simply. "Earned through decades of honest work. Just as your prison sentence is yours, earned through choices you made." As the meeting concluded without reconciliation, I realized something important. I no longer feared Todd. The power he had wielded through manipulation and intimidation had evaporated in the light of accountability. Walking from the courthouse with Linda beside me, I felt an unexpected lightness. I thought seeing him would be traumatic, I admitted. Instead it was clarifying. "How so?" Linda inquired. I considered the question carefully. I spent months questioning myself, my perceptions, my judgment, my worth. Seeing him today confirmed what I've gradually accepted. The problem was never me. That evening, I sat in my restored garden as sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The bird feeders, once empty during Todd's occupation, now attracted goldfinches and cardinals. Newly planted flowers promised future blooms. My home was returning to life, as was I. The refrigerator, now restocked with healthy foods and occasional treats, no longer contained emergency evidence. Instead, it held something more valuable: the ingredients for tomorrow's dinner party with Susan Carroll and other friends who had stood by me during the darkest period of my life. These new beginnings hadn't erased what happened, but they had created space for something I hadn't expected to find again after such betrayal. Hope for the chapters yet to come. 1 year after Todd's arrest, my life had transformed in ways I could never have anticipated. The criminal case concluded with Todd accepting a plea agreement. 15 years with possibility of parole, after 7 for elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, and related charges. While the sentence brought legal closure, my emotional journey continued through more nuanced territory. On the practical side, financial restitution had been ordered, though recovery remained partial. The courts froze Todd's remaining assets, including proceeds from pawned possessions, with all funds directed toward repayment. My pension had been legally restored to my control, with financial institutions implementing enhanced protection measures against future exploitation. The Senior Financial Protection Program I now volunteered with characterized my case as ultimately successful because I had retained my home and regained independence, outcomes not guaranteed for many elder abuse victims. My home itself had been fully restored through a combination of insurance, victim compensation funds, and community support. The physical spaces Todd had damaged were repaired and reclaimed. More importantly, the house once again felt safe, a sanctuary rather than a prison. The garden flourished with perennials contributed by neighbors, a living symbol of resilience and renewal. Allison and I maintained contact after her divorce from Todd was finalized. She had moved to another state for a fresh start, but called monthly, gradually processing her own guilt about enabling Todd's behavior through silence. "I was so afraid of him by the end," she confided during one conversation. "I saw what he was doing to you, but couldn't find the courage to intervene until that final confrontation." "Fear is a powerful controller," I reminded her, thinking of my own initial paralysis. "You found your voice when it mattered most." My relationship with Todd remained complicated. I attended his sentencing hearing, listening as the judge characterized his actions as a fundamental betrayal of filial responsibility and calculated exploitation of a parent who had given everything. Todd showed little visible remorse, focusing instead on how the conviction would impact his future. I delivered a victim impact statement that day, not to influence his sentence, but to reclaim my narrative. Standing straight despite arthritis that sometimes troubled my joints, I spoke directly to the court. "I am not defined by what was done to me. For 40 years, I taught children to recognize their worth, to stand up for themselves and others, to find their voices even when afraid. In my darkest moments, I forgot these lessons. I allowed manipulation and fear to silence me. But eventually, I remembered who I was. Not just a victim, not just a mother, but a woman of strength and purpose, who deserved dignity and respect. To those experiencing similar exploitation, especially from those you love most deeply, I want you to know that age doesn't diminish your right to autonomy. Your home, your finances, your choices remain yours. Help is available. Speak up. Reach out. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. To my son Todd, I loved you from your first breath and through every stage of your life. That love continues despite everything that's happened. But love doesn't require surrendering my selfhood, my security, or my dignity. I hope someday you'll understand the difference between support and sacrifice, between helping and enabling. Until then, I'll carry both my love for the child you were and my grief for the man you've become." The courtroom remained silent when I finished, the judge nodding with visible respect before proceeding with sentencing. Several elder abuse specialists later requested permission to use my statement in training materials, a request I granted with hope that my experience might strengthen others. My sister Patty, having witnessed the aftermath of Todd's exploitation, relocated permanently from Arizona to a neighboring town. Our weekly sisters' lunches became cherished rituals. Rebuilding the closeness geography had diminished. "I'm not leaving you vulnerable again," she insisted, though I assured her I was far from vulnerable now. Indeed, my experience had forged unexpected strength. The woman who once swallowed hard and remained silent when threatened now spoke confidently at legislative hearings on elder protection. My testimony, alongside that of other survivors, contributed to strengthened state laws regarding financial exploitation and fraudulent guardianship. The most meaningful development emerged organically through conversations with other seniors who had experienced similar betrayals. With support from the community center, I established a weekly support group for elder abuse survivors. What began with 4 hesitant participants grew to 15 regular attendees, sharing experiences, resources, and encouragement. "You made me feel less alone, Barbara," a 72-year-old widow exploited by her nephew explained during our 6th meeting. "Less ashamed for having trusted someone who hurt me." These connections extended beyond the formal group. My home, once a site of isolation and control, became a gathering place for friends both old and new. The dining room table where Todd had demanded my pension now hosted potluck dinners and card games. The living room where he had screened my calls now filled with book club discussions and volunteer planning sessions. On Thanksgiving, 1 year after Todd's arrest, I hosted dinner for a chosen family that included Patty, Susan, Carol, Linda, Officer Jenkins and her husband, several support group members without other holiday plans, and 3 former students who had remained involved in my recovery. The dining room overflowed with food, conversation, and genuine connection, a stark contrast to the controlled, tense meals during Todd's occupation. As we shared what we were thankful for, I reflected on the painful journey that had led to this moment. The exploitation and betrayal had shattered my sense of security, yet through that breaking had come unexpected gifts, deeper friendships, renewed purpose, and profound self-knowledge. "I'm thankful for second chances," I offered when my turn came, for discovering that even at 68, new beginnings are possible, for learning that family isn't always defined by blood, but by love, respect, and mutual care. The criminal justice process reached its conclusion, but my healing continued through purposeful action. The senior center director invited me to develop an educational program on recognizing and preventing elder abuse. Drawing on my teaching background, I created accessible materials and interactive workshops delivered at retirement communities throughout the county. "You've helped hundreds of seniors protect themselves," the director noted after reviewing participant feedback. "Your willingness to share your experience is making a tangible difference." This sense of purpose extended to advocacy work with state legislators crafting enhanced elder protection statutes. My detailed documentation of Todd's exploitation strategies helped identify legal loopholes requiring closure. When the strengthened Elder Financial Protection Act passed with bipartisan support, I sat in the gallery watching democracy respond to citizens' vulnerabilities with concrete protection. Financial institutions implemented improved safeguards based partly on cases like mine. The local bank, where Todd had redirected my pension, now required enhanced verification for account changes, with special protocols for senior customers. The manager invited me to train their staff on recognizing warning signs of exploitation, a session that revealed how commonly these scenarios occurred. "We see suspicious patterns weekly," one teller confided after my presentation, "but often lack clear guidelines for intervention. Your specific examples help us identify red flags." My relationship with Todd remained unresolved. He sent occasional letters from prison, some expressing superficial remorse, others subtly blaming me for his circumstances, all ultimately focused on his needs rather than genuine reconciliation. I answered selectively, maintaining boundaries while acknowledging our connection. The counseling sessions with Linda helped me navigate this complex emotional terrain without surrendering my hard-won clarity. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or removing consequences. Linda reminded me during one difficult session after a particularly manipulative letter from Todd. It means releasing the burden of resentment for your own peace, not his. This perspective helped me gradually release the consuming anger while maintaining appropriate boundaries. I could acknowledge Todd as my son without accepting further exploitation or manipulation. I could hold space for potential future healing while recognizing that genuine reconciliation required his fundamental transformation, not just my forgiveness. The refrigerator evidence that had triggered Todd's infamous scream became something of a legend among elder protection specialists. Detective Marshall even incorporated the strategy into training materials, calling it the Bennett method of evidence preservation. When I joined panel discussions on elder abuse prevention, audience members often asked specifically about this detail, fascinated by its effectiveness as both evidence repository and psychological trigger. The refrigerator represented more than just physical evidence, I explained during one such discussion. It symbolized my decision to stop being invisible, to ensure that what happened to me would be discovered, regardless of my ability to speak about it. That container was my voice when I feared being silenced permanently. On the anniversary of my return home, I hosted a garden rededication with everyone who had contributed to its restoration. Former students, neighbors, support group members, and professional allies gathered among flourishing plants and hanging baskets. The bird feeders attracted goldfinches, chickadees, and cardinals, colorful visitors that had returned as the garden recovered. This garden represents all of you, I told the gathered friends. Different strengths, colors, and contributions, creating something more beautiful together than any single element could achieve alone. Through the darkest season, you held space for renewal that seemed impossible from within the darkness. As twilight softened the gathering, conversations flowed among people connected through their participation in my recovery journey. Linda chatted with Susan about community resources. Officer Jenkins discussed security measures with Jennifer, who had installed my system. Former students engaged with support group members, generations connecting through shared commitment to community care. Observing this tapestry of connection, I understood the profound lesson emerging from painful experience. Security came not from walls or locks, but from genuine community. Independence wasn't about handling everything alone, but about having the freedom to choose interdependence. Family transcended blood relation, encompassing all who approached relationship with respect and reciprocity. Later that evening, after guests departed, I sat alone in my garden watching fireflies emerge in the summer dusk. The house behind me stood restored and peaceful, no longer haunted by violation. The savings account Todd had emptied was gradually rebuilding through disciplined management. The physical bruises from his grip had long since faded, and the emotional wounds, while still tender in certain moments, no longer dominated my daily experience. What remained was wisdom hard-earned through painful experience, the recognition that standing your ground doesn't require physical strength but moral clarity and determination. That age doesn't diminish personhood or rights. That voicing uncomfortable truths, however difficult initially, brings freedom no silence can provide. Frank had understood this, I realized, remembering his letter urging me to always stand your ground. His words had reached across years and loss to provide guidance when most needed. Now I carried similar messages to others facing exploitation and intimidation, not just theoretical encouragement, but practical strategies born from lived experience. The fireflies multiplied as darkness deepened, their intermittent glow creating patterns of light against the garden shadows. Like those illuminations, clarity often emerged most powerfully against the backdrop of darkness. My journey through betrayal and exploitation had revealed capacities for resistance and renewal I might never have discovered in easier circumstances. This wasn't a story that ended with neat resolution. Todd remained incarcerated, his future relationship with me uncertain. Financial recovery continued gradually rather than instantaneously. Emotional healing progressed in spirals rather than straight lines, with difficult days interspersed among stretches of genuine peace. Yet standing in my reclaimed garden, watching fireflies illuminate the darkness with ephemeral brilliance, I recognized the profound gift hidden within painful experience, the discovery that even in our supposedly vulnerable later years, we contain untapped reservoirs of courage, resilience, and wisdom. That voices silenced can find new expression. That dignity, once recognized as innate and non-negotiable, becomes a compass guiding us home to ourselves. Have you ever faced a situation where standing your ground felt frightening but necessary? I believe we all have inner strength waiting to be discovered in challenging moments. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, share, and comment with your own experiences of finding courage when it mattered most. Thank you for listening, and remember that your voice and boundaries deserve respect at every stage of life.